Hello and welcome to Rehydrate. This season, we'll be reading and discussing Liu Cixin's The Dark Forest, book number 2 of the Remembrance of Earth Past series. This is season 3, episode 2, Cosmic Brush, where we'll be discussing until the end of part 1. In season 1, we talked about the three-body problem, and the hosts have varying level of knowledge on this book and the rest of the series. My name is Dan, and I've read the series a bunch of times.
Hi, I'm Tim, and I've only read up to this week's reading.
Hi, this is Amin, and I've only read up to this week's reading. And additionally, I'm co host of the Rehydrate Spoiler Cast with Dan. And this season, we also have a new co host joining us. Her name is Talia, and she is also very experienced in the entire series. So if you have read the entire series and want to dive deeper, or if you, like me, don't care about spoilers, you should check out the Spoiler Cast.
And I also want to mention we have another interview that I just posted on the feed with a person named Priya, and it was a great discussion. You should listen to it. And then I wanted to follow up with some notes we got from a listener who I actually did another interview series with named Frank. And he has experience reading the book in both English and Chinese. So he has some good insight into stuff that is basically doesn't translate as well, or is not obvious to a listener or a reader who is reading in English. I'll put the notes, his notes into the show notes so you can look at them. But I picked out a couple that I thought were interesting. And so the first one refers to the Tong, which is the ship that the actual like naval ship that Zhang Beihai is looking at in the first episode. And Tang refers to the Tang Dynasty from ancient China from 618 to 907 AD, and it's generally regarded as the peak of Chinese civilization. So I think it's indicative of like this is supposed to be the peak of military, the this big carrier, but then it becomes obsolete, which is interesting. And then I also want to talk about one of the old men who were introduced in the last chapter. His name is Miao Fuchuan. He's a coal mine owner, and a coal mine owner in China is apparently a stereotype. And there's sort of men who are rich but lack class, which you can kind of see with his character. And then finally, he did mention that in this chapter we do meet with an unnamed Al Qaeda leader, and I think it's supposed to be kind of be taken as read that it's Bin Laden. But this book was published in 2008, and Bin Laden was killed in 2011. So Liu Cixin wouldn't have known that that was going to happen. He figured he'd live to his old age. Thank you very much, Frank, for your notes, and I will continue to look at them and bring up ones that relate to the material that we're talking about in the current episode. So, moving on to the summary for this episode, we start with Zhang Beihai continuing his work within the Space Force to ensure that the military is ready and believes in victory against the incoming Trisolarian invasion. When planning the future of the fleet, Zhang is the only one that volunteers for the high-tech area of research that includes life support and fusion drives that go to 5% of the speed of light. We're also introduced to the wall facers and the start of their plans. We meet with Ray Diaz, who researches how to build a bigger bomb and in the process develops a fear of the sun. Bill Hines and his wife think about ways to build on their neurological research to both better humanity and increase cognitive abilities as a way around the Sophon lock. Frederick Taylor starts to develop a plan for a swarm of small fighters equipped with large bombs. To help develop his plan, he seeks information about World War II kamikaze pilots and even meets with the leader of Al Qaeda. Luo Ji exits the UN building after being named a wall facer and is a victim of an assassination attempt by the ETO. Thanks to his bulletproof vest and Dasher's quick reaction, he is relatively unharmed. After trying to renounce his position of wall facer, he realizes due to the nature of the program, no matter what he says, no one can really trust that he's left the program, so he eventually embraces the ability to do whatever he wants. He requests an idyllic manor in the mountains and lives a life of luxury. He also requests that Dasher find his dream girlfriend in real life, which Dasher does with the use of face recognition technology, and it is an art graduate named Zhuang Yan. Law tells her that his plan is that she is to be happy, which starts with a trip to the Louvre, where they explore famous paintings together, including the Mona Lisa. The remnants of the ETO meet in the three-body world and assign 3 wall breakers to determine and expose the secret wall facer plans. Luigi is not assigned a wall breaker, saying he is his own wall breaker, but admitting that he ultimately poses the biggest danger since he is in direct contest with their lord. Finally, the military has taken over operation of the Hubble 2 space telescope, and despite its inability to see Trisolaris, they are forced to point it in that direction. And while expecting to see nothing, they do notice lines through the cosmic dust that resembles a brush. They are shocked to realize that they are looking at the trails of the Trisolaran fleet on their way to Earth. And like last time, I wanted to kind of give a rundown of all the new characters. We did hear about some of these characters in the previous chapter, but I think we're actually quote unquote formally introduced to them. Albert Ringer, who is the Hubble 2 astronomer, Kent, who is the liaison to the PDC or the Planetary Defense Council. We're introduced more fully to the wall facers. Manuel Rey Diaz, who is the former president of Venezuela. We have Bill Hines, an English neuroscientist and former president of the EU. His wife, Keiko Yamasuki, who's also a neuroscientist, and Frederick Taylor, who is the former U.S. Secretary of Defense. And we're also introduced to Zhuang Yan, who is a graduate of the Central Academy of Fine Arts. So, with that long preamble out of the way, what did you guys think of these chapters?
This was a bit of a ramble to me because the way he like writes this is one gigantic chapter.
Yeah.
Like I wish he would break it up a bit. I'm not sure what the reason is for like why not chapter breaks and why is it one enormous passage.
I agree. As a person who has to write these summaries, it's very
Yeah.
difficult.
That again, it just it's like a big run-on kind of thing going on. Made it a little difficult to get through because like I don't know how much of this is like wheel spinning because he clearly like the point of a lot of these is to establish Luigi as the main character in this, show him as distinct from the other three. The three other wall facers and all of their plans and their parts of this chapter, I kind of had them pegged as like not important characters or like they're just being like whatever their plans are going to end up being useless or not important and that he's Luigi somehow through some unintuitive way is going to end up being the savior here even though he's just leveraging his wallfacer status to pretty much live the life of a playboy and get his dream living girlfriend
and his $300,000
yeah,
wine from the
yeah,
bottom of the ocean.
300 his 300-year-old, cask of wine. So I mean, that seems to be the whole point of these is that it just like the other characters don't seem that important, or if it seems like a bunch of like I don't know, fake out red herring because he obviously focuses so much time on him and his inner monologue and inner life that it's hard to not take this as like this is the important character. The rest of them won't be that important, even though he's trying to concoct some kind of out of left field way for the Trisolarans to be defeated. Or
I mean, I don't think he's even trying to concoct anything, right? I think he's just given up and like says, I'm not going to do anything. Like I don't know what to do. This is not going to do it. So I'm just going to take advantage when I can.
right, and that by sheer happenstance or something like that, for whatever reason, he becomes an important character or concocts a plan or is important to the story going to come out of left field. That's my prediction anyway.
I mean, I think that's also established by the fact that the ETO is trying to kill him,
Yeah.
like they try to assassinate him. And then the ETO guy who met him in the hospital, I think he confirms that too, that he's supposed to be the most dangerous guy. Like, I think he
Yeah,
says something like
that's
that.
that's the big, he kind of like the previous book, Lucian, seems to be like, set up these kind of somewhat obvious mysteries. Like, he's just kind of saying out like this is what the hook is. You're not supposed to know why he is, but kind of plain as day that he's going to be the most important character. As far as the other wall facers are concerned, like my big question throughout all this is why, if the whole point of the wall facers is that they're not supposed to divulge their plans and concoct these in secrets, why like they constantly talking about their plans and their I don't know, is that like did I miss something or did that come off as strange to you, Amin? Or
I was confused by that too, and I think the whole point about the other wall facers, I agree with you, Tim. It seems like a lot of red herrings. I'm sure part of it was a way to show that alternate ideas are being explored. And I think part of it is just to show a contrast with the main character. I actually thought the second half of this went a little bit faster than the first half of this chapter, just because again it felt like it was making progress towards the next step in the plot. So I appreciated that part of it, but in terms of plot, I agree. There's a lot of distractions here that I think could be. I also co-host the spoiler cast, but I also have a terrible memory, so I don't remember anything. But I don't think any of these, even if I was reading this for the first time, I wouldn't assume that any of these things really matter in the long run.
yeah, I mean, Luigi seems to be like he's like a JRPG protagonist or something at this point. That he's supposed to be special. Like you're supposed to think of him as special or something, but you don't know why. Like he's like Neo in the Matrix or something. He's a chosen one or something for that's what I'm getting out of this. But like why you don't know because obviously goes out of his way to show that like he's not serious. He obviously doesn't care.
Yeah, and I think in terms of building tension, I think had all the wall facers been written equally, I think that would have been you wouldn't have known which character to follow, using air
Hmm.
quotes, but to follow. But here, because we were introduced to him first, I can easily disregard what the other three are up to because I know that ultimately doesn't matter because they're not the main character.
So I would say I don't know if you can disregard them because I think they're also all four plan or all the other three plans are kind of commentary on humanity's like response, like what they would be. You have like Ray Diaz who just wants to develop like a super bomb, like that's like his response to that's his plan. And you have Heinz who wants to kind of better humanity and like doesn't really have a direct plan, but has a plan to better humanity and like indirectly beat the Trisolarans. And then you have Taylor's plan, which I don't really fully understand what he's trying to do here, based off of these chapters. But he's meeting with Al Qaeda, he's meeting with people who know about kamikazes, thinking about that you need an enemy to hate. So, and then he's also talking about also using Ray Diaz as bombs. So I think it's just like, and maybe it's a commentary on the U.S. because he's the Secretary of Defense. It could be, yeah. That's how I took it anyway. It's like more of a commentary about how
Well,
people.
right. I mean, but in terms of the plot, we know that those aren't going to be what we actually focus on as we move forward.
I don't know if you can make that assumption.
Hmm, I'm going to make that assumption.
Yeah, well, it's just the weight that is obviously given to Luigi and his versus the other in the narrative. So like that's just kind of an assumption I'm making because of that. Like I'm not saying that the other wall phasers are gonna fall off as characters. They're not gonna play a role, or that they're all not going to go into cryostasis and all wake up 400 years later and all try to enact their plans. But again, it seems weird to me that they're divulge if they're supposed to keep their actual like motivations and plan a secret. They're kind of doing a bad job of it right now.
So I would say for that, like the wall facer program is overseen by the PDC, which is sort of an arm of the UN, right? And
Right.
I think most of the plans are divulged either at those meetings because they need to request resources or get some kind of resources approved or that kind of thing. So I'll say that like their plans aren't totally divulged, right? Like they're divulging only
Sure.
what they need to divulge.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you can infer something by what they're requesting. They just seem to be a little explicit at this point. As I mean,
Yeah,
if when somebody's saying I want to build a team of kamikaze fighters and all that, like that's still an obvious detail that the Sovans could pick up on, and
yeah,
and again, maybe he has some sort of like a 11th dimensional chess reason for doing this, and that it's not actually the real reason. It's not like he's just planning to kamikaze the Trisolaran fleet. Maybe there's obviously it's such a strange situation too, because it's how do you plan for something 400 years out? So
right.
like maybe this is just the first step in a long, long series of steps and plans, and at the other end of it is something completely different than what was first conceived. Yeah, it's just odd that there's just so much talk about it. The way he shows them just kind of explicitly saying what they're thinking in a lot of ways seem weird.
So, given what you guys know about the plans so far, Diaz wants to build a big bomb. Heinz wants to build a big swarm of ships
Yeah.
with bombs also, and Taylor wants to. I'm sorry. Heinz wants to improve humanity's cognitive abilities, and Taylor wants to build a swarm of ships. Like, which of those do you think has the best chance of working?
Yeah, how am I? It's like how am I supposed to know? like,
Like, I guess, like, if you had to
yeah.
choose between the three of them, like, what would you think would? Do you think any of them are on the right track?
I mean, that's impossible for me to even answer. Like, I haven't, you don't know what like, whether this is going to, what the nature of the Trisolaran fleet is or what space, like, I like some of the details that he talks about, like, about how, like, a nuclear bomb is not effective in space the way you think it is here, like,
Yeah.
on Earth.
So if you were a member of the PDC and like you had to say, you need to make a choice between one of these plans, like one of these plans has to ultimately win. I guess then, given what you know, which one would you choose?
I guess I would say Bill Hines because he just seems to be the most reasonable at this point, or just the more I guess out of the box thinker, or not immediately going to the most obvious thing, like this is just going to be an interstellar war, as a Star Wars or Star Trek type interstellar war. Like seems kind of obvious to me that like the way to actually like defeat something that is going to be something you can't think of, or it's going to be it's got to be some sort of very creative solution.
Sure. How about you? I mean,
I would say the same. I think his seems to be the other two are just blowing a lot of stuff up, and that
yeah.
that seems to be the outlier. And from a pacifist standpoint, I think that's what I would probably lean towards as well.
I think that's a reasonable conclusion, right? Given the fact that like, could our bombs even hurt the Trisolarans? Like, we don't even know what their ships are made of. You know, we don't even know they wouldn't even work against traditional ships without some modification, right? They said they can like. I didn't totally get what like, he was talking about, and actually, like that reminds me. I put a great quote from Ray Diaz, like when he's in the military and he's talking to scientists about that stuff, and like he clearly doesn't understand what they're talking about. And they're like, "Well, we already know this," and then he's like, "Well, you're permitted to be redundant." I just thought that was a
Yeah.
great quote. But yeah, like I don't fully get like how you can seems like put a bunch of ball bearings or whatever into a nuclear bomb and and make that more effective.
I mean, maybe. I mean, possibly. I mean, that seems more. Obviously, there's no air in space, so you can't have a pressurized shockwave or something like that. So, if I was
Right.
even going to like start to think about how to defeat a fleet that is beelining towards Earth using some sort of weaponry or a shield or some way to actually destroy the ships, it's like hard to think that you're going to just point something at them and shoot them unless you have the technology for some sort of
Right.
beam or ray or something like that. So like if you're going to think about like some sort of kinetic weaponry, is it going to have to be something like you're going to cause so much like space debris or like micrometeorites or something like that, and you're just going to like flood space or something, or the area around your planet with, they'll have to pass through it, and something that would disrupt tronics, or I mean, they say that at a certain speed in space, even little, a pebble could punch through a hole of something. So I don't know.
I know like people this is kind of unrelated but kind of related. If there's always like theory of like there's like an asteroid headed for Earth that could be destructive, that like one of the theories is like you can put a bomb on it and it kind of
Oh,
redirect the path. Like I don't how
well,
does that
yeah,
work?
that's well, yeah, well, yeah, like Armageddon. But well, yeah, that was another point. Like it's like maybe the way to defeat a fleet wouldn't be like you'd have to know, like given how space travel is, or at least how we understand space travel, is that like it's kind of hard to actually change direction.
Mm,
We just tend to like do the math, point something at there, and just sort of slingshot it towards it, and then like use gravity to pull ourselves in, and land. Like it's not like you're like constantly changing direction because it takes a lot of energy to do that. So is the way to defeat the train is just to find some sort of way to blow it off course or misdirect it,
mm.
and like their energy problem for that, is to they'd be blown off course, and they wouldn't have the energy or wherewithal to
Yeah, that's interesting.
redirect themselves. But I guess that's the kind of thinking, given our primitive, understanding of space flight, those are the kind of things, ideas I would have to extrapolate from.
So I want to talk about the wall breakers a little bit. So we're also met with in the three body world with the remnants of ETO, and they're talking about like they're going to assign a wall face or wall breaker to each wall facer, but they don't assign one to Law G, saying he's his own wall breaker. What do you guys make of that? Or is there anything you can make of that?
I think it's just sort of, again, pointing at the specialness of Luigi. He's his own worst enemy. I don't know,
yeah,
again, it's just sort of, again, just kind of pointing it to him being special in some way we don't really understand or are supposed to get at this point.
but the Trisolarans definitely get it, right?
Yeah,
They know that he's dangerous,
yeah, again, it's like he's Neo or something,
right?
like they know that he's there. There's some special quality about him that he's the chosen one. We're not supposed to know that yet.
And I guess we'll have to talk about his more of the dream girlfriend, now real girlfriend scenario. I know you guys
Yeah.
said you kind of skipped over it last time. Did you also kind of? I think these chapters are. I'll say these are the worst chapters in the whole series, and like I will say, like, after this, like, there's not much more of this, which is good. Like, that we're kind of
Right.
finally like, this is the as bad as it gets, but there is some interesting information there. One of the things that really stuck out to me was when they're on top of the mountain and Jong Yuan is talking about the Trisolarians coming here, and she says, you know, why can't we just give them a plot of land and live together? Luigi is kind of shocked, not shocked, but you know, he thinks of like, all right, well, Sophon's heard you, and maybe even the high precepts of the Trisolarians heard you. And he says, I'm thinking that the person who might actually have a chance of saving the world is you. I want to talk about both things. Like, did you guys read these chapters or kind of skip over them? And then also,
No,
do you
I
think
read them.
okay.
Yeah.
And do you think like hers is kind of the key to his eventual plan?
Yeah, possibly. I think they are kind of setting her up again, like the way Luigi is, special in some way. Yeah, she's the female counterpart to him, like she's Princess Zelda or something in this scenario, and that she has the power of love or the power of her positive thinking. I mean, she does kind of have the somewhat kind of creative idea of people developing a language through facial expressions as a way of outwitting the Trisolarans, and that's something that the Sophons can't detect, and that might have develop a way of communication. Again, I think they might be setting her up as a vector for some creative out of the box solution that will have nothing to do with conventional space warfare.
Yeah, I think the unspoken language thing is really interesting, and then showing that as giving the example of the Mona Lisa, I think is also really interesting. How people kind of interpret that painting in a million different ways just based on her slight smile, right?
All right.
So I thought, yeah, I thought that was a pretty interesting way to put it. Even though the scenario of them getting there was kind of ridiculous, but how about you? I mean, did you read it or kind of skip over
I
this one?
I skimmed over those parts, but I agreed about the Mona Lisa being good. I don't know, foreshadowing or whatever, or an example of what they were going to do. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, I kind of skimmed over a lot of that. I guess I'll find out in the spoiler cast, but I'm curious whether or not this is actually the end of it, or if if there is some kind of return, because I'm not looking forward to that.
Yeah. So, like I said, that I'm not saying I don't want to say too much about the plot, but this is as cringy as it gets, right? So, like, yeah, the first time I read it, and every time after that I read it, it's like, oh man, what this like nerdy playboy guy kind of envisions his dream lover, and then like gets that girl who happens to match his complete description, and then just falls in love with her immediately because he dreamed about her. It's not good.
Again, we talked about him in like the author Lucia Shin, and kind of like made comparisons, to him and to like Michael Crichton and authors like that are good at like writing characters as like fulfilling a certain like role. Here's the astrophysicist, here's the biologist, as like representatives of a certain scientific mindset. Like Crichton, he's like clumsier at trying to like portray these, more, I don't know, well-rounded, kind of artsier characters. And I think this is him kind of attempting to do that,
Yeah.
and trying to subvert your expectations as like a hard sci-fi author, that he's going to have a hard sci-fi solution, and he's trying to maybe show his softer side here, that like the way we're going to beat the Trisolarans isn't through hard science and warfare, but the creative theater kids or something, But he's just a little clumsier at portraying those types of people and that type of thought process.
Yeah, I think it's really good about. I mean, to me, like this book, especially, is like really good at talking about how society reacts to such a existential crisis, right? And like
Yeah.
how society would. It's kind of reasonable, like how it would kind of break down. I mean, it's kind of fantastical, obviously, that we would develop a wall facer program, but it seems reasonable enough, right? And he's obviously really good about talking about scientific concepts, like really either realistic ones or kind of just a little bit above reality ones, like the Sophon stuff, where it's still plausible. But yeah, the character,
Yeah.
I think that's a common complaint about his writing is that the characters aren't really characters. Where in the last book, the Long Way to Small Planet, like it was all about the characters and like basically not that much about the science. It was like almost like a complete opposite. So it's interesting that we did that kind of
Yeah.
big difference in style there.
Yeah. It is very almost an inversion, author's relative strengths.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm sure like Becky Chambers can and does. I mean, like she did bring up some interesting concepts, like the algae powering the ships and that kind of stuff. But we never really hear anything about like the technical details about how that works. And I was kind of expecting it, right?
Right.
And we never got it because like maybe I'm just coming from this series where I wanted to hear more about like the technical details about that stuff.
Yeah, well, it's a different type of sci-fi where it's like, yeah, it's
Yeah,
skipping all those details and then more concerned with the kind of society that that creates, or the kind of cool space society and the adventures that you can have within because of all of this stuff, as opposed to getting deep in the weeds about the actual like details, scientific details. Yeah, I mean here Lucian is good at like you said, divulging these like details about how a nuclear bomb doesn't work quite as well in space, or the sophons, which I mean, the sophons are seem fantastical, but it is something extrapolated from quantum theory or quantum physics to the point where that stuff seems like magic to us because we don't fully understand it, but we can imagine extrapolating what that math means into something that seems almost magical to us might be perfectly scientific
sure.
or within the realm of reality, like unfolding a proton. I don't know.
I also want to talk a little bit about Dasher's character. So we find out that he has leukemia from his operation against the ETO from last book, and he's going to move on towards kind of hope in the future. He's going to hibernate and hope in the future that that leukemia is cured. And he also maybe misuses police resources, but maybe doesn't because it's part of that's quote unquote part of the plan to find Jong Yuan. Yeah, any thoughts on Dashir's character here? Does this make you guys like? I mean, I know like we had some discussions before about me liking Dashir, and this is part of it too. He does a lot of cool stuff. He's saving Luigi in the beginning. He's like the most competent. So I guess like are you? And then we also find out when he goes to visit his son in prison. Right, his son is already in jail for scamming the old guys out of their money. So I guess like yeah, how do you guys think about his character?
Hey, I think he's supposed to be kind of the everyman's perspective of all of this in a way, because he's not a he's just a smart but down to earth cop, and he's the only like through line to the last book. We haven't, I mean, other than the brief thing with U and G at the beginning, we don't. None of those characters have really returned in any real way.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. I think he's the author's just kind of like I'm expecting Dasher to somehow be there at the end, or somehow be like he's gonna be the only character in the next book to carry through all three or something
Right, right. Could be.
like that. Like he's the author's like pet character, or like
Well,
the one.
we also briefly see Dingy on TV talking about the Sofan strikes, and apparently he is outside. Like he is the Shishin's like pet character. He's like he shows up in other books as well.
Oh really?
Yeah, I haven't read the other books, but yeah, apparently he does show up in the Sishin universe or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought Dasher he was less bothersome. He's less bothersome in this book so far than he was in the last book, and I think
Yeah,
given up some of that pseudo hard-boiled detective type of talk and all that kind of thing, and he's just a detective and a cop and whatever. So he is more multidimensional, and I think that makes him less comically annoying to me anyway.
comically annoying. Oh, so I also wanted to talk about, we talked about the wall facer plans and like which ones we thought we had the best chance of working. There was also a discussion by John Behai and the rest of the military talking about the different approaches to building ships for how they're going to achieve victory, like what's the best approach. So they talk about three approaches: low tech, mid tech, and high tech. And they all go to different degrees of speed. So low tech goes 800 kilometers per second, has no life support. Mid tech goes 4,800 kilometers per second and has partial life support. And high tech goes 16,000 kilometers per second, or 5% the speed of light, and has full life support. So none of the military seems to be into the high tech except for Zhang Beihai, who says like that's really the only chance of working. And he even goes further, saying like not only do we need to do high tech, but we need to make fusion engines that we don't currently have. And people are like, we have SOFON, like we can't do that. But he's the only one who volunteers for it, while the rest of the military seems to want to go towards the more conventional approaches. Do you agree with Zhang Beihai here?
So I guess I didn't fully, and again, I might have been skipping this section too, but I didn't really fully understand what why they were really focusing on the other two, or like why even bother with low tech, because it seemed, I don't know. I guess I didn't really quite understand. I mean, I understand the numerical difference between the three, but I didn't understand the strategic implications of the differences between the three.
I don't quite get why they're so calibrated to these specific numbers or how they settled on that. I mean, it seems to me that if high tech is possible for humans to achieve, in the time that would have the, like whatever other beneficial technologies might spin out of that research, like it would at least expand the possibility space that we would, be able to develop something useful against the trisolarans. But I guess it's just a matter of resource allocation. Is it worth it to go after that, to go after the high tech, even though it might not yield anything, and you might have just wasted a bunch of efforts and research when I guess you could have been just kind of like, again, like trudging along and building a series of space mines or something, low tech space mines, and just like planting them throughout the space around Earth or something. I don't.
Worked on DCS9. Why not?
Yeah.
They mine the wormhole, right? They can work here. I think like the idea is that no one believes that the high tech thing can even be possible because of the sofa unlock, you know. So everyone's just wants to just focus their resources and energy on the stuff that they think they can do despite the sofa unlock. But John Bay High, like throughout all these chapters, has been the only one who said seems to have like a complete faith in victory. He's like convincing everybody that, or he's trying to convince everybody that we need to believe, in our victory, and then the troops need to also believe that we can have victory against the Trisolarans. And so I think to that end here, he's also saying like we need to go beyond what we think we can do and try to go for the high tech solution.
Yeah, I think he's just trying to channel, like, I don't know, like 1960s spacer, like positivity about like whatever our efforts in this, as long as we're motivated, and whatever our efforts towards this are, I think he seems to believe that like it will yield something, whether in just pure like morale for humanity. Maybe he's like, it's not necessarily about the destination, it's the journey type thinking.
I guess the question is like, why do they need to go so far out? Like, it seems like mostly people are content with like engaging in the battle in the solar system, but John Bahai like wants life support ships. We can go out further because they set out to, I forget where they say, but like they can go really far, right, to the edge of the solar system or beyond. So it looks like he maybe wants to take the battle to them outside of the solar system. I don't know. Is that how you guys read it?
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I don't, other than in the most like generalized sense, like expanding the possibility space where we can engage with them might increase our ability to even just maybe throw them off, off course further out, take the battle far enough away from Earth that any collateral damage would, maybe be minimal to us. I don't.
Yeah, I know. Like I've talked to other people too, and John Beha's character is kind of hard to get into, but I will guarantee you he becomes really interesting.
Yeah, I can kind of see him, like morphing into like the leader, or the sort of the figurehead around which people rally.
Yeah, I mean his ideas around having the triumphalism ideas and kind of the belief that we can beat the Trisolarans. I think it becomes really important to in a couple of different facets. So there's a couple things that I picked up also in foreshadowing for other stuff that again you guys aren't going to get, but to our listeners who have read the entire series, one, you should listen to the spoiler cast, and two, maybe you've also picked up on these. But there's lots of talk of painting from Zhuang Yan, and Zhuang Yan and Luo Ji also look at the Mona Lisa. The Mona Lisa has a very important part to play in the series that you probably wouldn't expect. So is there anything else that you guys would like to talk about or have thoughts on, or I guess like overall, like how are you thinking about the book so far? Do you like it better than the first book as much? I know it's kind of early on, but given where we are versus where we were in the first book, how are you guys feeling?
I think at this point, so I'm going to assume 2 episodes in, and I'm going to try to remember what that was like. I think I liked Three Body Problem more. It seemed to have, I don't know, it seemed to be propelled more, and I think there was less, maybe there were fewer red herrings about where people are going to go, but this seems I know, Dan, I think you said your favorite book was the third one. So to me, this is the price of admission to get to the third book. But so far, I think the first one was more what I enjoy reading.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely suffering a bit from like middle book, middle chapter syndrome, and this is common, in a lot of trilogies and all that. But it is spinning its wheels a bit, and like I'm kind of, and again, I don't know, how long it takes to actually get to, because to the battle, this has obviously the unusual setup that you kind of like have this thing to anticipate, this big battle, this this looming plot point. And I'm kind of hoping, this again, knowing nothing about like the course of how things go, even though I do like know that like it does skip like many years, centuries or something like that at some point. That's literally all I know about where this goes. In a way, I'm kind of hoping that the big battle isn't the third book or take place in the third book, and that it somehow happens, or that part happens by the end of this book, and that the third book is like after that, or something, or fallout of that, or just something different. I don't know. I mean, that may not be the way it's going. Probably not. I don't know. I'm kind of hoping that like this kind of like takes a jump to that, and kind of sooner than later, personally.
Yeah, I won't say anything, but yeah.
Yeah.
So how about the thing I think I like about this book? I kind of go back and forth about. I mean, third book's definitely my favorite of all of them, and that's every single person I've talked to on the interview series, and most people I've talked to, like they're talking about this series, like the third book's always their favorite. But I kind of go back and forth on the first book being my which one I like better, the first or the second book. I think I like, I don't know, maybe on like every read's different, but in this current read, I think I like the second book better than the first one, only because the scope is expanded so much from the first one, where the scope basically for the first one was just kind of following Wang Miao and his trying to figure out the mystery. And it blows up, once we figure out like all the Trisolarans and the ETO and there's all this other cool stuff. But it's basically seen through his eyes, right? Where this one is like a lot more, there's a lot more things going on simultaneously, and maybe like you said, like Luigi is kind of more focused on as the main character, but we do see, we have plenty of perspectives from uh other people at the same time, so I think that's why I enjoy this. And then plus, like, it's not just Wang Miao reacting to it; it's like all of society reacting to it, and the government's reacting to it. And I like those kind of stories where they kind of talk about like the world. I think we talked about it last time, where like the leftovers talks about like how the world changes when this event
Right.
happens, and so this is kind of expanding on that even more.
Yeah, it's kind of. I mean, it's playing to his strengths in that like it is a bit more interesting with the scope pulled out a bit, and a bit more of a ensemble cast, as opposed to an interesting character. But and then to his his weakness, and just kind of focus on Loji and his special girlfriend.
Yeah,
Like it's kind of like his strengths and his weaknesses are both on display here, but like at least we're getting some of that more like pulled back and ensemble like perspective of this, whereas the first book didn't have anything quite as cringy as Lua Ji, but it was still kind of like following kind of somewhat dry characters, Wang Miao for most of it.
yeah, definitely. And I'll say, I think I said it before, but like we don't see Wang Miao again. Like he's gone. Like it's pretty weird.
Yeah, I was surprised by that. Like, he was or I guess, I wasn't sure whether he shows up again or something like that, or he cycles back to becoming a main character again. But yeah, if he's just not there, he's
He's mentioned in passing a couple times. Yeah, I think he's mentioned in passing in one of these chapters. I think Dasher mentions he mentions them somehow, talking about some scientist he used to know, or like smart person he used to know, or something like that. So I think that's him. Frank from the show had thought he was maybe talking about Dingy, but I think he's talking about Wang Miao. But it could be either one.
yeah, he played his part, and I mean, it's kind of a sign that the author is more invested in the wider scope of the story than individual characters, and the readers like investment in individual characters.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to translate to the TV show. That's always a question that's kind of my mind, is like how they're going to do that. Like, we think about Game of Thrones. Like, yes, they got rid of their main character in the first show, but it was in a very dramatic way, right?
Yeah.
And but this one is like, well, it's not there anymore.
Yeah, I mean that was I mean, I mean like that was a hook, in
Right.
Game of Thrones, him like that was supposed to be something that subverted your expectations and actually drew you into this. Is
Right. And drove
like
the
this is
plot,
not going,
right? Like all
yeah,
the
and this
events
is
happen because of that.
right, yeah, yeah, and it's not, and it's supposed to, yes, if you were most people, if they really were invested in that character, were maybe bummed for a little bit, but I think they, they got over it because it was such a surprise and a bold move. So it's like, oh, this series is not going to be what I expected it to be.
Right. So I'm gonna root for Rob Stark now because he'll do
Yeah, right,
it.
right. But yeah, I mean, just kind of like dropping a character like that
Yeah.
is, I mean, it's if you're kind of invested in, a through line throughout all of these, it makes it kind of hard to like. I can see a lot of people just like, kind of liking the first book and then picking this one up and just saying, oh, what the hell is this, and putting it down.
Yeah.
Whereas Wang Miao, but then again, Wang Miao wasn't that as heartwarming a character. Like, even like, for as cringy as Luigi is, and Zhang Yan, like he still has more personality than anybody else in the book, in the series so far, in a sense, just because he's
Yeah.
kind of a lazy gadabout, and um,
He's really funny in these chapters too.
yeah, yeah, like the wine thing. Like
Right.
I can see that translating to becoming kind of an endearing character if played well in a TV. If the writers actually like flesh him out,
Yeah.
becoming kind of an endearing character in a TV show adaptation or something like that. If you got like you'd have to get maybe something of a charismatic actor for him to as well. But
Yeah. Yeah. It's also interesting that Yo NGA doesn't also show up that much. I mean, she shows up at the very beginning of this book, but she was maybe the main character of the last book. It's kind of a tie between her and Wang Miao, but yeah, neither of them really show up in this book so
yeah,
far. So
maybe the most important. I mean, she doesn't get nearly as much screen time as Wang Miao in the first book, I think.
yeah,
But
but
certainly, yeah, kind of the catalyst, I think, for all of this. But yeah,
it's interesting that.
but I think that's her role, was just to be kind of the, again, that catalyst.
Thanks for listening. Please check out rehydrate.space for all release episodes, reading list, pronunciation guide, and any news about the podcast coming up. Be on the lookout for our new series called Unfathomable. That should be coming out soon. That is talking about music related concepts. So that should be good. And leave any comments or by emailing us at rehydrate@fastmail.com or on Twitter at rehydratepod. And please join us next time for episode 3, The Spell, where we're covering all of part 2 of The Dark Forest by Liu Cixin.